Hello, everyone. Welcome to the EOcafe, where the EO community meet. The last EOcafe before the summer, and it's proving quite a popular one. I hope everyone's got their summer plans organised, but leaving after today, obviously, if you're here. Today we've got a guest from ESA, Nick Hanofsky. Nick is head of the mission management and ground segment department at ESA in Esrin. And we're going to talk about Destination Earth. Now, Destination Earth is something that's been around now for, I guess, 3.5 years, maybe a bit more. I remember a meeting that Andreas Weispack called back in November 2019, I believe it was, where the idea was discussed, and we had a look at what the ideas were and how it could fit. But things have moved on quite a lot there, and I guess a lot of people have been following it from a distance, like me, and have a partial understanding of what it's all about. But what we hope to do is to have a better understanding of what it's all about. So just a first quick reminder, the rules of the EOcafe. If you can keep your microphones off until asked to open it, join the discussion, but you're very welcome to keep cameras on and be visible to others and see others as well. Questions, when we come to questions, please put them into the chat. You can enter a question into the chat at any time, but we'll, as the normal routine, we'll go through and I'll talk with Nick, and then we'll come to questions later. But it's best if you can put them into the chat, and then we can see what's coming up. So let me just maybe to start off with ask Nick just to say a few words about his role in Esrin and how he's got involved in Destination Earth. Nick.
Hello, good afternoon, and Jeff, thanks a lot. Natasha, thanks a lot. Yeah, happy to have the opportunity to report a little bit out of the machine room of DestinE and related aspects. As you said, Jeff, I'm the head of mission management and ground segment, so I'm responsible for the operations of all Earth observation satellites here at ESA, including the Copernicus Sentinels. I'm also responsible for the ground segments and the data management aspects. And in that respect, DestinE is an important component in this. I should also say, and maybe later on we have a bit of an opportunity to reflect on this, I'm also in charge of a program proposal that relates to DestinE and ESA program, potential ESA program proposal that we are making ready for the ministerial, which is intended to complement the activities on DestinE. So there's also thinking with our member states. We had actually a meeting today with all 22 member states to reflect a little bit on the content of such a program proposal. So in addition to all the activities that are ongoing in member states on the European scale, there is also a ESA-specific line of thinking and activities. When it comes to DestinE, maybe I'll just start with a few introductory comments. We are in the implementation phase of DestinE. The initiative was kicked off 2 months ago with a joint force of the Commission directorates. So we had DG Connect, of course, who is running the initiative and is responsible for the initiative, but DG DEFIS and DG RTD were also present. So it was a strong show of force on the Commission side and a very enthusiastic and very inspired kickoff. And I think that catapulted us from a preparatory phase and of course a phase that was revolving a lot about also the governance and the principles of implementation into actually implementing things, and some things are happening, and I assume that a lot of participants today are from the industrial perspective interested what's happening, and we are in that phase where things are becoming really interesting. I've prepared 3 slides that we can show, but Jeff, is that in terms of background enough for the moment?
Yeah, I think that's fine, Nick. I mean, I think maybe it's simplest. You've covered a little bit of the ground I was going on to. So maybe the best is to jump straight into the slides, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah. Okay. So what you see here on the first slide is just a summary, a conceptual summary of the key rationale for Destination Earth. DestinE is the acronym that is used. And the prime purpose is the support of the European Union's Green Deal and digital strategy, with a key objective to enable policymakers and users to reach the next step in informed decision making. So the initiative is strongly focused on these objectives. You see that the European Union via the Commission has tasked ECMWF, ESA and EUMETSAT jointly with the implementation of phase 1, and that's what's happening right now. This assortment of entities is sometimes also referred to as the 3 E's. So ECMWF, ESA and EUMETSAT. If you see that acronym 3E somewhere in the documentation, that's referring to that that arrangement. And then again, evidence-based policy development, actionable predictions, and application development are the key drivers behind the initiative. Let me say from a general Earth observation perspective, because I've been now in Earth observation for the last 10 years, I think what we are seeing in the case of DestinE is a transition from something that has been pioneered in the meteorology and the climate domain, the predictive potential based on models in the predictive potential are based on HPC computing, and to expand that potential into other domains of Earth observation. We will talk certainly a little bit about potential application domains, the key domains that are already identified in the phase 1 for DestinE is climate change adaptation and extreme events. But if you're a bit open-eared and open-minded these days, you will hear a huge diversity and plethora of Earth observation focused, Earth observation based digital twin initiatives, some of them quite advanced. I like to mention the example of urban planning, for example, where we see that cities are basing their infrastructural decisions, their planning, strategic planning on running models that take Earth observation based inputs, of course, other inputs as well, and are actually closing the loop also with the citizens to come up with scenarios and feedback on scenarios by the affected people, and thus a more democratic way, I would even call it, on the decision making. But again, this is a random example. It's just that I'm very much under the impression of some recent presentations that I've seen in that respect. There are many more, and some we have covered here in ESA also with precursor activities to the digital twin agenda, where we looked at half a dozen different themes that fit into that domain. Maybe next slide, please. So just reinforcing a bit what I said, unlocking the potential of digital modeling, utilizing high performance computing. Maybe something to say up front here is also that this coincides a bit with the realization that came with our reflections on the evolution of the Copernicus ground segment, for which we are also responsible, and seeing that the boundary lines between the capacity of what I would call cloud services and high performance computing are getting much more transitional. The perspective of, for example, doing processing, data processing in a cloud environment that is also or is transforming into a high performance computing environment is something that is quite important for us as well. So what we are seeing generally is that these domains are not as strictly separated anymore than they used to be. And some of the processing tasks that we foresee on the Copernicus ground segment side for data processing, we also relate and start to see in the context of high performance computing. Of course, the aspect of machine learning is something that is relevant in the analytical context. And the overall ambition, again, to transcend Earth observation from traditional representation of the past and present into future scenarios to be able to predict changes is the driving motivation. Maybe just from an institutional point of view, may be interesting to recall that I think in 2018 there was an IAC, International Astronautical Congress presentation, a joint presentation by Mike Freilich of NASA, by Stephen Volz of NOAA, and Josef Aschbacher, at that time still director of Earth observation in ESA, which was recalling this paradigm shift where Earth observation would again transform from something that is strongly focused on the past and present towards something that, by utilizing high performance computing, can also start to develop scenarios of the future and changes in the future. I think another aspect to emphasize at this stage is that these efforts are definitely also from an engineering perspective aimed at being an integrated effort, meaning that the user, that the industrial partners that we will activate in that context are called to interact and to engineer in an agile way the system in the most attractive way. I think that's something that is new. There is not, I would say, a final fixed architecture, engineered architecture, but there is this component of optimizing on the go. Again, this is already giving a bit of a hint to industry here that we seek that engagement on the industrial side, but also, of course, on the user side, to shape the actual user utilization environments in the best optimal way as we go in the evolution of the initiative. And that's also one reason why the initiative is actually separated into 3 phases. I've mentioned that the first phase that was equipped with 150 million euros by the European Commission and by DG Connect has started a few months ago. And the phase 2 and phase 3 are kept deliberately a bit flexible at this stage in order to optimize the actual potential and opportunities that the evolution entails. I think that's just a philosophical and philosophical / engineering principle that is worth mentioning at this stage. And then I have a quick final slide just to break down a little bit the work distribution as agreed with the European Commission. Maybe it's also a good opportunity to say that the whole team and I, on our side, on the ESA side, as on the ECMWF and EUMETSAT side, we have established specific teams here that are tasked with the implementation and operation of DestinE. So there is a restructuring in ESA that is taking care of that ambition and the importance that this interface and that initiative also represents for us. We are feeling to be pioneers in the sense that this is a trilateral institutional effort in full coordination among each other. And of course, we are for the first time in a contributing agreement with DG Connect. So that's a newer actor. It's not the key actor on the Copernicus side that we had many years, not even decades, to develop a excellent working relationship. We are doing this on a very quick scale now with DG Connect, and we are pioneering this altogether, this relationship, and there's a lot of things to be gained in that pioneering spirit and learning from each other. So let me recall a little bit the fundamental breakdown. So you see ECMWF in the central box here in the lower left, higher left hand corner. Digital twin engine, the engine room, if you want. Then EUMETSAT focused on the data lake, and I'll say a few words about this in a moment. And then the focus of my presentation and my mandate here, of course, to talk about the core service platform that we intend to develop. Let me mention here that the project manager on our side is Eric Maujour. You may know Eric from the Copernicus domain and from the Copernicus program that we are implementing, and he has transferred from Copernicus, taking away all the experience that I just mentioned in interacting with DG DEFIS into the interactions with DG Connect and of course with our partners EUMETSAT and ECM.
And I forgot to say at the beginning that unfortunately Eric couldn't join us today. We'd foreseen him at the beginning, but unfortunately in the end he couldn't make it.
He's actually in the air right now, so it would be a bit difficult to do it from an airplane. So apologies also on that. He would have liked to join us. He gave me a long list of items not to forget to mention here, so I will go through this long list of things.
And an equal long list of things not to say, I imagine.
No, he was actually very keen to share some of the thinking here, and it's something that also in terms of the process is quite interesting to share, and I'll do my best to represent him.
Yeah, we'd be happy to have him back or have him in the future as the project moves forward and we're able to say more.
Yeah. Good. Then let me just recall a bit functional elements that may be worthwhile talking about. So complementarity data providers, the auxiliary data. You know that DG Connect, of course, is appreciating the Earth observation and Copernicus component, but is clearly not focused exclusively on Earth observation. There's a strong sense that the DestinE system needs to rely on a huge spectrum of data sources and data per se. Then, of course, you know the elements of Copernicus and being able to utilize also the new power of the Copernicus data access that we are implementing together with the Commission, with the Copernicus data access approach that we are taking. And then the data lake. Let me mention that the data lake is very important. Maybe not intuitively so much because it's a huge repository of our input data. I think here the key challenge for EUMETSAT is really to make sure that they are providing the access and the interfaces to the data sources that are relevant for the ecosystem. But even more importantly, and I think even more important in terms of the overall data volume that we are talking about, these data lakes are the place where you will find the results of the modeling and the output of the DestinE system, and that needs to be managed and that needs to be scaled. And I think that's a key challenge that EUMETSAT has taken up here. Maybe just to give you a bit of a feeling of the data volumes, we expect that the output of DestinE already in the first phase will be comparable of the output of the Copernicus system. So we are talking several tens of terabytes per day. That's what the Copernicus Sentinels are generating. We estimate that even at the end of the first phase, we will reach that level of output, and that gives you a little bit of a feeling of the data management challenge scale that is relevant. Then, of course, the external cloud provision is something to be looked at. Clearly, we are looking, when we are talking about the core service platform, not only about an environment in which to access data, but this is a utilization, is intended as an environment for the exploration of and exploitation of the data, not only a data access environment, and therefore a cloud service space needs to be reserved for the users, will be allocated to the users, and that's part of the overall logic of the system. And then users per se, of course, users data services. I've mentioned that we take this approach with regards to what we call the co-design approach. The potential user shall be in a position to take decisions on the development and future functions of the various elements. So that feedback loop with the users is a key element and will show up in all the ITTs that will be released. Of course, the implementation coordination via DG Connect. Let me mention here that this happens at various levels. There are coordination bodies. Some of you may actually be part of these coordination bodies that are part of the initiative. There's also a high-level monthly, more or less monthly, coordination meeting with the directors of all 4 entities in which we are monitoring the progress of and the programmatic progress in particular of the initiative. So that's a lot of coordination that is being done here by DG Connect, and we are frequently talking to our colleagues, which is in the Commission, which is something that is part of assuring the coherency of something that, in the end, all the stakeholders or all the implementers that you see in the central box here are doing independently and autonomously. So there are no strict interdependencies, but a high level of coordination in terms of development. But we all have our own set of specifications and implementation aspects to fulfill. And then, of course, the external HPC providers, the EU HPC initiative to be mentioned here, the new HPCs that are part of the joint undertaking that is key and central in the DG Connect context, and to utilize portions of these resources for the purpose of implementing these 2 key digital twins. Again, namely the digital twin on climate change adaptation and extreme events that need to become operational in 2.5 years from the kickoff. So basically less or a little bit more than 2 years from now. That's excuse me. That's the time scale that we have agreed with the Commission. So that's a bit the introduction that I want to give, and I hope that's providing you a bit with a structural background. Maybe if I look at my cheat sheet here a little bit, you may wonder a little bit about the procurement approach that we are taking, and I think I'm preempting already a question, Jeff, that you may want to ask on.
For certain, Nick. I mean, you've thrown a number of terms in there which are used in different contexts as well, and raising me the question how a little bit more about the organization, because you talked about a joint undertaking, which is a very specific Commission instrument. Used with Galileo back in 2001, 2002, something like that, maybe a little bit before. So I'm interested to know quite how how that's fitting and what that, and then you've talked about coordination bodies, and those coordination bodies, are they just amongst the three main players, or the four with the Commission, of course? Are the scientists involved? Are there industry players involved? How are these two different elements that you've referred to working?
Yeah. So these bodies are actually in implementation. They are quite diverse in terms of composition. Member states are involved, industry is involved, and they are just constituting themselves. So it's a bit early still to say really about the detailed functionalities and how this plays out. But that's these boards are the key instruments for the Commission to coordinate and to decide how to actually also engage in the onboarding of the various stakeholders that are foreseen. When it comes to the European initiative in the HPC context, here there's a specific role that ECMWF is already playing. So ECMWF is very systematically looking at capacities in the European Union context that Euro HPC entities can provide. There's also an analysis of what additional entities can provide, but again, all of this is in a very early stage and will be reviewed and will have to be agreed with the Commission and with DG Connect in terms of the mechanics, in terms of the principles that will be implemented. But that's something that is ongoing as we speak.
Okay, it's an incredibly complex and intriguing project. You mentioned two digital twins. Just explore that a little bit more on climate change adaptation and extreme events. There are other digital twins which are being developed. Mercator working on an oceanographic maritime twin. Will those become integrated? Is there an onboarding pass for expanding the scope of of DestinE?
Yes. So maybe just a bit historically, the choice of extreme events and climate change adaptation is based on a user consultation process that was run with the Commission. It's also coinciding with specific competences that ECMWF is providing. So they are very well suited to tackle these issues from a digital twin perspective, from an HPC perspective. So that fits nicely together. And I think I'm not saying too much. We had official events already on the digital twin ocean component, which I think is gaining a lot of momentum, a strong support from the Commission. We had several Commission entities giving strong support for integration and onboarding of that digital twin in the DestinE context. And other topics are also emerging. I don't want to preempt too much because it's really the remit of the Commission here to say when and how this onboarding takes place, but I'm not telling too much to say that this is already visibly part of the programmatic discussion that are happening and discussion of the implementation approach and the things that we are discussing among ourselves. Of course, all of us have an interface also already to Mercator Ocean. They play an important role in the Copernicus service context. And we have been all invited and we have been all actively participating in the event that was organized in Paris a few weeks ago to outline the potential of digital twin ocean. And I think there is, again, a strong sense that that this is, I think, what you would call a low-hanging fruit because it's so tangible and well developed and so clearly also supported by the incredibly good work that Mercator Ocean has been investing in that domain.
Okay, so who are foreseen as the users, and how are the user requirements being put together?
So again, the Commission has started various kinds of user consultation processes. There were events already. I think you mentioned Andreas Weisbach in 2019 already addressing quite a broad community. I think we were actually attending the same meeting in 2019, where this was already part of the discussion. From our perspective, what we are seeing is in the first phase, we are definitely focusing on the Commission as the key user here. But the implementation plan already foresees that in the phase one, as part of the phase one work, the overall openness of the system is a key challenge to be tackled. So the ITTs that will come out will strongly focus on that perspective to maximize the potential of user onboarding to a maximum extent. And maybe that's the point where I can really give you a little bit an overview of the logic of the procurement that we are foreseeing. In the procurements that you have already seen and that are already ongoing and triggered by ECMWF, and that we will follow in the logic, there's a strong sense of prototyping and onboarding logic for the various elements. So on the ECMWF side, prototyping, onboarding in the digital twin engine context, on human side and the data lake context, and for us on the core service platform. But there's this logic of prototyping and onboarding as a first set of ITTs that will focus on these aspects. And you may have seen that we have already issued a pre-announcement of an ITT in that context. So that's a first ITT, ITT on our side that's coming related. And then the second one and the third one will then on our side focus more on the platform itself, on functionalities of the platform, such as registration functions, on data management functions, interface functions to the data lake, for example, on infrastructure as a service functions that will be elaborated and will be tasked. And again, all of this against the background, what is the maximum impact user perspective that can be formulated. So your question is always penetrating the whole or any of these layers that I'm outlining. Let me just complement and complete that the third ITT that we are planning is what we are called the advanced system perspective. So in addition to the platform functionalities, we will be asking how the core service platform can be equipped with, let me call it coarsely intelligence in terms of data analytics, in terms of visualizations, in terms of applying artificial intelligence functionality. So this should give you a little bit the hierarchy and the logic that especially ECMWF and we are following in the implementation and in the procurements that we are planning for our respective part of the DestinE system.
Okay, and how closely is it linked, and what are the links with the Green Deal?
Again, it's clear that the Commission is here in charge to really make sure that at each step of the implementation, and they are part of the procurement process, the objectives for this specific phase in the context of the Green Deal and the digital agenda objectives are pursued. That's why we really have these coordination functions at all the levels that I've mentioned.
So they will place sort of requirements on you as a result of that, and on the three partners in terms of the system. There's quite a few questions in the chat, most of them from Emmanuel.
But if I may, Jeff, I see a good one which just fits a bit also the description on the procurements, and I think something important to clarify. The question how ESA platform is linked to the TEPS.
Yeah, and maybe broader as well to yeah.
So let's make very clear that from our perspective, and one of the key ambitions of the platform and obligations even, and specified in the task book that we have received from the Commission, is that we need to make sure on the platform that we are optimally utilizing the Copernicus data access. I think that's one key ambition, and I think the enthusiasm and the support of DG DAFIS is also hinging very much on that ability to assure this. You may know that because a question closely related to that TEP question is the question on the DIAS. You may know that with the new data access, we will basically transcend the original spirit of the DIAS, which was an intermediate step towards enabling data access environments that are going beyond data access. I think that's the most simple definition of what the DIASs were. They were, or they are, a lot more than just fulfilling that ambition. From a more industrial policy perspective, the DIAS were put in place to bring industrial players on the IT, from the IT domain together with Earth observation domain players. I think was a very successful exercise in that respect. There was also the question of business plans and business models that can evolve, and we have seen quite a variety in that context. But the long-term perspective for the DIAS is that the DIAS operators will become part of this larger ecosystem of operators of the functionalities of the Copernicus ground segment, and in that sense also indirectly of DestinE, because in that sense the Copernicus data access is a functional part of DestinE. The same is true for other functions. And again, here I really want to stress the important role of EUMETSAT with regards to managing this huge repository of outputs of the system. So that's an additional key element. With regards to the TEPS, I think we are very clear from a programmatic perspective that ESA is not intending to run these TEPS in an operational sense forever. There are questions on several TEPS how to reach or to keep the communities that are using these TEPS, how to keep them engaged and keep them running. But the TEPS are not part of the what I would call the indirect infrastructure of DestinE. So there, I think we need to be really clear. So I've covered a little bit the DIAS aspect, the TEPS aspect. I think these were the other.
On the DIAS, I mean, we have 4 commercial DIAS, and which are in competition, plus the WECIO from ECMWF. If the DIAS is going to play a strong role in this, and ECMWF is a prime partner, how is there an equal opportunity for industry? How is there a level playing field there?
I think the level playing field is really with the overall openness of the system. Don't forget, again, we are talking here about DG Connect, who don't have a bias in terms of the Earth observation domain. I think we really want to see, or they really want to see, an overall openness in order to get the optimal user uptake and the optimal user service out of this system. And I'm not totally clear whether this is really answering your question. Again, the DIAS logic is a logic that transmutes and transforms from our perspective into a much broader service logic. And again, most of you probably have seen the data access ITT that was out and that is being processed, which is reflecting that general new and much broader service logic that we have agreed with the Commission. Again, I think some of the DIASs may transform, some of the DIASs may stay as they are and may pursue their successful business model. I think we on our side want to make sure that none of these elements has a priority on being implementable. And again, Mercator Ocean here is something that will have very specific a very specific logic to be implemented. Maybe just really to recall also that the ITT logic is something that is coming. The procurement logic is something that we will equivalently implement on the ECMWF, EUMETSAT, and our side. So there will be a strong focus on the industrial contribution. And I mean, what is the way to get engaged? First of all, I mean, we have to really distinguish two approaches. First of all, there are the concrete ITTs in the implementation of the system. And that's what I was referring to with regards to 3 layers. And then there's a maximum opportunity philosophy that is being pushed by DG Connect to have operational players optimally supplied with opportunities to become an operational part of the ecosystem that will be provided.
Okay, but is there a further opportunity as well in terms of being able to access and even determine a little bit products that are coming out of the system and to exploit those in a commercial sense?
That's the idea, and it's not only the idea in the context of becoming an operational element in the overall. We call it even an ecosystem now, but it's also an element in the development of the system itself. So let's keep that in mind, that there's this architectural element, and then if you have a component, a digital twin that you would like to operate in that context, I think there is a strong ambition to provide an environment and an interface, especially in the subsequent phases, to integrate this.
I imagine we'll come back to talk about that, not so much today, but sometime in the future. Let me open the floor because we do have questions. Emmanuel, you've put several questions into the chat. I leave it to you to decide which one of them you want to ask now, to keep it fair for others to have a chance to ask questions as well. Emmanuel?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. However, if you can copy paste my question, I will be pleased to get answers because they're all important for the community. Again, this is 150 million euro for 30 months paid by European Commission. It is linked with the Common European Data Space, and I wrote a number of questions regarding the links between various activities coming from Digital Europe program addressing data spaces and destination. So the question I pick, Nick, 150 million euro paid by European Commission to the freeze. How much will go to industry? Thanks.
I think I'm not completely clear on the figures of EUMETSAT on ECMWF side. On our side is the standard figure. I think we are at about 13%. That we will take in terms of ESA management and running costs, if you want. 85%, that's the general figure that we provide for all of these programs, will go to industry. So that's the ballpark that we're in. There's a few specific elements that may modify that figure a little bit, but 85% is usually the figure of the budget that goes to industry, but that is true for all these observation programs.
And are the figures available for the split of budgets between ESA, EUMETSAT, and ECMWF?
I can give you, I think I'm even again not completely sure, but I can give you a bit the balance. I think we are quite balanced. I think for the time being, it's 55 million on the ECMWF side, 50 million on our side, 45 million. So again, rough figures that it's a pretty fair share in the phase one.
Okay, thanks. Marcello, I guess your question has been answered, or do you want further clarification on that?
I think it has been partially answered for regards to the TAPs. But what about also linked to the other question about use cases? When we talk about the core services on the ESA platform and use cases of the digital twin of ECMWF, is there any split in terms of application domain?
I think it's very good that you mention a bit the logic of the use cases. I think we have to be a bit careful in terms of terminology. Some of us, me included, when we talk about use cases, we are thinking thematically. There's this thematic dimension of use cases. We have talked a little bit about different application use cases. In the context of the phase one procurements, when we talk about use cases, there's also that dimension of use cases being challenges and being optimization efforts with regards to the functions that I mentioned. Again, in the first ITTs, this prototyping, onboarding functionalities. These are also use cases in that terminology. And then for the platform functions, registration, what I mentioned earlier, these three levels with the intelligence. So these are also use cases, functional use cases for the platform, basically translated into challenges of the system and the best engineering solution for that sense. So let's keep that in mind, that there are these two dimensions of use cases in terms of themes, of application themes, and then functional use cases in terms of the functions of the system. And I think the ITTs are asking for both of them, maybe at different degrees at different stages of the development.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Marcello. Wolfgang Kapferers has a question around the link between Sentinels and the data link. Wolfgang?
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is, how strict is the data lake responsible of bringing all this huge variety of data sets towards the HPC infrastructure? And is that has everything routed through the data lake, or is there, how is that, how strict is that thought?
I think it depends also a bit on the phase, but I'm getting a bit out of my comfort zone. I think that's a question that you need to answer. Mm-hmm. I think for the first phase, I would see pretty much everything coming via the EUMETSAT data lake. I think from the discussions that I've been following, later on there may be additional elements, additional functionalities being asked to provide different ways in addition to get relevant data into the system. But again, I'm not totally confident to answer that question in a digital way. Let's put it this way.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Stelios raised his hand just now, I noticed, and has taken it down again, but he's now put a question in the chat, So Stelios.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks a lot for organizing this again. It's very interesting, and thank you, Nicholas, for sharing your wisdom with industry. Well, it seems it seems that I also was part in that workshop back in 2019, which was somehow, to my understanding at that time, was an initiative of Weisbach that he was moving from grow to connect, if I remember correctly. So in that context, I remember from that workshop that the digital twin initiative, the final goal was to become a core service, if I remember correctly. And in this context, I understand also the involvement of ESA in order to set up the initial infrastructure and run this later on at an operational phase. So the question I made was relative to this coming ministerial, but Emmanuel gently commented it, that given the chance, maybe Nicholas can also comment it. Is ESA going to request any contributions from the member states in this ministerial for this activity, additional to the funding requested from the provided from the Commission? And if this is the case, what will be the main arguments towards member states? What will be their gains for national industry, national ecosystem, both user size and industry size?
Yes, very good question and very current question. So the short answer, it's not decided yet. Our member states are the ones deciding what will be put as a proposal in front of their ministers in the ministerial. We are discussing quite intensively with the member states such a proposal. I can tell you that the budget that we are aiming at is in the scale in the range of about 50 million euros. But even that is only a rough figure, because let's not forget it's an optional element, definitely. So it's all quite flexible. But in that sense, yes, we are tasked to define such a program proposal. And the rationale is the following. We think that in terms of the scientific basis, in terms of the R&D efforts, and in terms of readying and supporting and complementing DestinE, ESA can provide a lot of pre-operational R&D related efforts. So nothing operational, really focused on the pre-operational domain and transforming new knowledge and new understanding about being able to characterize elements of the Earth system and making that characterization ready for implementation in the DestinE context. So we see such an ESA program proposal as a vehicle to actually bring member state developments, to bring scientific developments into the DestinE world. In the opposite direction, it's for us also an opportunity to use the vehicles that DestinE will be providing, the data access, the functions that we have been talking about earlier, into the member states and to member states initiative. That's at least the logic that we are discussing and trying to develop with the member states. I think what is very clear is that all the member states, and we've just had a feedback today, they are all interested because there's so much going on in all member states. Even the small ones are actively reflecting, and of course their motivation is whether this effort is at ESA level really supporting and catalyzing. I think one delegate used the word catalyzing the national efforts with regards to DestinE. So that's the plan. Again, we are in a very early phase also to discuss with DG Connect this, but DG Connect has already expressed appreciation of the fact that we are actually aiming to, to develop a complementary ESA element to that. So there's also a positive signal and appreciation on the DG Connect side. In terms of timing, it's quite fortunate because the phase 1 stipulates, as I said, that we need to use the time in phase 1 to define the phase 2. So that's being started as part of the task book that we have on the table. And that would coincide with the opportunity to, once we have defined until September, October, just before the ministerial, the content of what we call the ESA Digital Twin Earth Initiative, to be funded out of the ESA member states. You can think a little bit about the complexity and key questions that are coming in terms of the openness of the system, because not all member states are the same member states. So there are a few ambitions and a few considerations that we need to bring in. But again, we have opened that perspective, and it's seen as an opportunity to be elaborated and worked on. And we hope that by September we have a program proposal on the table that our member states find attractive enough to put in front of the member states and ESA member states in November.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, it makes absolutely sense.
Okay, thanks so much.
Good luck with that, Nick.
It's good to have the feedback to make at least a bit of sense. Sometimes these discussions are so intense, and sometimes we revisit different angles of this, where you realize that there's a limit to the mental capacity to reflect on all of these aspects sensibly. So thanks for the feedback, that at least in some respects that are making sense.
The discussion here has a lot of potential supporters, which can play a crucial role in this room.
Okay, very good.
The participants in this room, definitely.
And, I mean, if I may be so bold, that's also very important for us. I think the feedback. We had a very rigorous process with the scientific community. We have put our DTE program, ESA program proposal, also in front of our consultation body for the scientific advice of the scientific community, so the so-called AGEO. And they have reflected on this in a meeting very thoroughly and very positively. But of course, in the end, this ESA member state engagement, and ESA is about industrial policies and industry implementing this. So you are the main players in this. So I'm only trying to structure and giving a little bit hope that there is a sensible organizational and programmatic approach behind this, because in the end, it's your program. It's an industrial program. And when we talk about member states, also the member states and our stakeholders basically representing your industry and have your interests in mind. So there's a closed loop here that, and I really appreciate if you spread the word and use your influence to help us to make that happen. I think everybody is appreciating it.
Certainly, I don't know how many different nationalities we've got represented here, but it's a lot, and clearly they can provide general support to the initiative, as they will for other proposals from ESA. If there's anything specific that you feel that industry should be putting forward, then you just let us know.
Again, the general feedback that I'm not completely nonsensical, and being able to structure this in a sense that gives you a bit of confidence that, at least from an ESA perspective, we are not completely offline here, then that would be really good. I see Emmanuel complaining about the acronym. So DTE is a difficult one. We have in the program proposal that we are working on, I should really call it a potential program proposal. Again, it's ESA member state deciding in September whether it's going to become a program proposal. It's called ESA DTE now, so I'm afraid it's still shifting. I hope this is clarifying a little bit. If there's a really intelligent way that member states, but I haven't heard yet a completely different one. I think it's important that we put the ESA in front, so that programmatically it's clear it's not the Commission.
Emmanuel, does that
Good enough.
does that answer your question, or you want to follow up?
Maybe you have a better proposal.
Yeah, no, it was more a comment than a question. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
All this is super complex already for us, and we're quite involved in. So you can guess that for guys a bit outside, it's impossible to understand. So if, in addition to that, we are using same acronyms but different meanings from different organizations, it will be even worse. I don't have a solution, but I can think about one.
Maybe Jeff, it's the opportunity. I mean, I'm doing something very risky now, seeing that there are 90 participants. But again, I'm happy to respond to direct questions and inputs. If you send me an email, maybe you can make my email accessible and available. I'm happy to forward on concrete questions that you may have. I would like to make sure maybe that's something we can do on the Earth side. I will give you a general overview on the procurement schedule, Jeff, just to give you a bit of a timing with regards to the 3 ITTs that I mentioned in the platform context. So that may be accessible maybe via your website or something like this. So I think that may be a concrete service that we can provide, but I'm also willing to respond directly to emails. What I can do is I can generate a bit of a generic text element, which gives you a bit more schedule related information, because that is not so clear at that time, but I can mention the potential release date of the ITTs for the platform. And I can also mention the decision timeline towards an ESA program element, for example, and maybe a very rough idea about the discussions and the definition process for phase 2 that is run by DG Connect. That could be 3 elements that I could.
Okay, that would be great. It will be a few days before we'll have ready the recording, which is normally when we send out the sort of follow-up to the EOcafe, and thank you to everyone. So if we have material from you, we can add it to that, and also your generous invitation to take questions. Okay, good. Mark, you have a question about the applicability to ECMWF and UMETSAT? I think we know the answer to that, but
no, absolutely not. Good afternoon. No, just for the procurement. No, the question is indeed more precise. The question is whether there is or not an overall target for industry return for the overall program. Or if just depending on the entity who will be responsible for each part.
Yeah.
And in addition, sorry, just after your presentation, the part the additional part which will be requested by ESA from the different member states. Does this part be subject to geo-return rules as ESA, and in this case, how it could interact with the other part, which is supposed not to be subject to geo-return? What the process you plan to follow here?
No, I think the second part is the easier one to answer. Clearly, ESA programs follow geo-return. So that Earthwatch element, if it's an Earthwatch element in the end, that's at least the baseline that we are discussing, then would be fully subject to geo-return principles. So that's a clear answer. Again, I can only give you my impression. I think, I mean, ECMWF and UMETSAT are making strong, having a strong ambition to industrialize. That I know, and that this is what they stress. But I'm not mandated to give you percentages for ECMWF and UMETSAT.
Thank you, and let's share this hope.
keep sharing the question, maybe. Okay, I think we could draw things to a close there. Thank you very much, Nick, for coming and sharing this knowledge with us. I think it takes us a step forward in understanding, but also exposes even more the complexity and poses as many questions as we probably answered. So I would be happy to offer, as we said earlier, maybe with Eric, to come back to this subject in the future, and maybe we need to talk about it with ECMWF and EUMETSAT as well. But really appreciate your overview here, and also presenting the whole picture and not just the ESA perspective, as we did discuss. So thanks for that. Thank you everyone for being with us. Nick, is there a last comment you want to make before I close?
Just check the notes. Again, I have 2 densely written pages from Eric, which was supposed to substitute for it. But again, maybe just to highlight his last sentence here, as part of the advanced application, ESA will look for a wow case in terms of challenge for industry to be prepared. DestinE is certainly a nice place to become visible, surprise us. So that was a bit the notice here. Again, this is all new territory in terms of organization, in terms of entities working together, but also in terms of what we are trying to do. Let's not forget this. This predictive Earth observation logic, or predictive digital twin logic, is something that is just about to really enter into the mainstream. We feel strong support and strong creative energy on the industry side. So I'm really driven by what I see is happening in industry. So I would really hope that we can keep that mutual flow and agitation going, and I think that would be the key thing. And then, again, my commitment, Jeff, you get a short paragraph giving a few additional chronology information with the email that you will send out, or the link that you will send out to the recording. So that would be my final contribution in that.
That's fantastic, Nick. Thank you very much. And if at some point you feel that there's a point where you want to communicate again, then yourself or Eric, don't hesitate to come back and say, well, it would be good if we could do another EOcafe, or do even a workshop if it came to it. But so just come back. We'll stay in touch anyway, I imagine. Thanks everyone for being here. That's the end of EOcafe now for the summer. The next one will be on the 15th of September. So watch out for that. We haven't got the title of that yet. We're still working on it, but we hope to have something fairly significant to reopen the season, the second half of this year. It really just remains for me to wish everyone to have a really good summer break. Go away, come back fully relaxed, and see you in the EOcafe in September. And as is customary now, if anyone wishes to just jump in and say something, please feel free to do so. Just open your microphone and come in.